Hi, my name is Cindy Rang with the Fabric Patch in Ephrata, Washington, and we're working on our Jaye's Bouquet quilt, and today is month number 4, our pieced block. All right, so we're back at it, and let's see, this is our Jaye's Bouquet quilt. This is the one that was done by our very good friend Jen Oates from South Carolina, and so it's great that she is so fast and we're able to use hers as our backdrop as I'm still piecing mine together with you. So just for a quick review, we have done our embroidered blocks through block number 4, and much of this is actually back stitch and stem stitch, but along the way I've been showing you some fun alternatives and maybe some new stitches. Last month I think we talked about thread weights and making other decisions if you wanted to personalize your blocks. Also, each month we have done the pieced blocks, and the pieced blocks are kind of fun. A lot of them are really pretty simple, kind of pretty easy piecing, so it's fairly quick. And this month is probably the only one that is really a little bit involved this month, and I think that it's month number 12 that both have a little bit of hand applique involved. So I'm going to show you one technique this month and a different technique in month number 12, just to kind of, round out your knowledge just a little bit. So today, this is what we're piecing. These colors are the colors. If you got a kit from us, if you're following along with her fabrics and her pattern, then these are the colors that are suggested, but feel free to switch anything out you want, and you'll see that my colors are just a little bit different. I'm using a little bit different fabrics, but grab your pattern and let's go ahead and look at our blocks. Okay, so this is our pattern. It's really nice because she tells us exactly what to cut, how to make our half square triangles. And if you look at this, it's really pretty simple. We've just got some 2.5 inch squares, and then we've got our half square triangles. We have a little rectangle here, and then we're going to be appliquing on this piece right here. So if we look at this, this is our half square triangles, and she tells us in the pattern to do a 2 7/8 right sides together, draw a line, sew on both sides. I almost always round that up just to 3 inches. That gives me a little bit of extra room so that I can press it and trim it afterwards. And of course, I love our quick quarter ruler. We use this all the time, and so all you have to do is you just lay this right on the center, and then you can just draw your line with your friction marker, draw down the center. And then you can see I've already sewn on the outside lines, and then all I have to do is cut down the center, which gives us our 2 half square triangles. I'm going to go to the ironing board and I'm going to press this. I always like to press to the dark, and then that gives me just a little bit of smudge room to be able to square this up. I'll show you that in just a second. I'm going to go ahead and sew this one, cut this one, press all 4, and I'll be right back. Here are our 4 blocks, and just to point out that with your friction marker, as soon as you hit it with an iron, that mark goes away. And theoretically, the idea with a 2 7/8 inch square is that when you're done, all you have to do is cut off your little dog ears here, and as soon as you've done that, you have an exact 2.5 inch square. And I think that according to the math, that is supposed to work, but for me, I like it to be a little bit more exact, and so I really like that opportunity to come back in with my ruler and my rotary cutter, and you can see I'm going to take off very, very little, because really I only have an extra about 1/8 of an inch, but it just helps me to straighten it up just a little bit. And you can see that my diagonal line goes right through my seam right there, and you can see the amount that I'm trimming off, which is a tiny bit, but I just have that little extra insurance to make sure that my blocks, you can see they're right here, the 2.5. And I'm right in the line, and again, you can see the amount that I'm trimming off is very little. You don't have to do this. You can go ahead and do that 2 7/8, cut off your dog ears, and you're just fine. But for me, the idea of knowing that it's absolutely exact and my points come out just right, it's just very little bit of trouble to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and square up these other 3. Okay, here are my blocks, and then what happens is we have this little pinwheel in the center, and then she has us cut our other blocks, 5 of those in whatever color, and you can kind of fuss for a little bit if you kind of feel like a bird or whatever, if you have some directional fabric, whatever you feel like you want to do. We're going to sew this whole block together into our little 9 patch, and then there's a little rectangle, and again, so this is supposed to be 6.5 by 2.5, and I think this is 6.5 by about 2 3/4. Just, again, I just like that tiny little bit of insurance just in case something goes wrong here. So I'll piece all of that together. And then the rest of our time, we're going to spend our time talking about the piece that's going to go up at the top. We're going to talk about this. So I'm going to flip this around, get this stuff out of the way, and I'm going to show you how we're going to do this. Okay, so we have pieced our piecing part of the block, and we're going to work on the top. So again, this is not her, what does she call it, stitch and flip method. This is the way that I tend to do applique, which is just, I think it's just called line to line. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but for me, it's the easiest way to do hand applique. And so what I did is I started by making a little template out of just some cardstock. And so my template is, of course, of these 3 pieces here. And I want to point out, in case I forget to mention this later, she talks about bonus stitching on here. If you do your stitching and you hate your hand stitching, you have an opportunity to go in and do, I don't know, some fly stitch, some blanket stitch, some other embroidery stitches over the top of your applique if you feel like you didn't like the way that it worked out. But this is kind of fun. It's really very little applique, and so this would be that great little test to see if you feel like you like this or not. All right, so all we do need some applique pins. We do need the appropriate needle and thread, and when you're doing hand applique, the key really is doing a teeny tiny little needle that leaves hardly any mark at all, and then a teeny tiny little thread. So the needles that I prefer to use are the straw needles or Milner, same idea, in either a 10 or an 11. And then the thread that I like to use, you have a couple different options. I just buy the little bobbin thread of the 60 weight, and I like that. And typically I use just the gray, the white, the banana, and the black. Your other option, if you can get it, is silk thread, is 100 weight. Teeny, 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 tiny thread, so it's kind of nice. Your other option is Aurifil makes an 80 weight on this really cute little wood spool, and we carry that, and this works really well. You really don't need it in very many colors. People who do match their colors when they're doing their applique, you match your top piece, the thread to your top piece, not your background piece. So if that were the case, I would be using a blue thread when I'm stitching this little rainbow edge down to this is what my background is. All right, that's all we need. So what I've done is I've taken my first little template and I went ahead and I drew my line. And for some reason, I also drew my second line. This is, ignore that. Of course, it's just going to iron off, but that's not what I'm stitching to. But I'm stitching my top line here. And then I did the same thing on this piece. I drew the exact same line with my friction marker. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and trim this off. And so I really need about 1/4 inch. I could go a little bit smaller, but sometimes what I do is I'll trim as I go, and I don't like to take too much, so I'm just going to go ahead and trim this piece off. And then the trickiest part to this is that I have to line up this line with this line. And so the easiest way to do that really is to start with your applique pins on that line just to get it where I want it. And then I'll end up moving those. I'm not leaving those there. These are the little applique pins that I like. The reason that I like them is they're a little bit easier to hold on to, and they're not like those teeny tiny little applique sequin pins that I sometimes end up getting a little tangled in. So I do like these quite a bit. I'm going to go ahead and move this one out of the way and park it over here. I'll kind of move these as I go. Then, and people say, well, are you doing needle turn? This is not technically needle turn applique. All I'm doing is I am matching up as I'm stitching on that line, onto that line at the same time. So I've got my needle, it's already threaded. I've already got my, oops, it was threaded. This one is threaded. And I've got my quilter's knot at the bottom. And we're doing one strand of thread. So what I'm going to do, hopefully you can see this, is I'm going to go take a stitch on this line. Turn this whole thing over just to kind of get it started. And I hope you can see that line. You might, maybe, let me make that a little darker for you. And then I'm stitching through that line, right on that line. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm coming up, I'm going to stitch through there, take a little stitch right on that line, and then I'm going to go back and stitch on that line. I'm going to stitch on this line. And so I'm going to draw it in case it's hard.
We can see it.
You can see it really well. Mm-hmm. I don't have to. And then you can see that I'm coming back on this one. So I'm just lining up. It can't be easier, really. Oops, I need to pull that so that it's nice and tight. And pull my knot. And then when you kind of need to tighten things up, just pull it. And then what will happen is all you can see, you can't see my thread, I don't think. Can you see my thread? And then when I'm done, I'm going to go ahead and stitch all the way around, but that red line is all you can see. As soon as I hit this with an iron, you won't see the red line either. So all that's happening is I'm stitching on this line and the back line. It's just one straight stitch and a straight stitch, straight stitch all the way around. Couldn't be easier. Nothing tricky about it at all. And as you go, you can go ahead and pull out the pins. You kind of want to make sure that everything is pinned pretty well though, because the only time that you're going to get kind of messed up is if this shifts just a little bit, and then you have a little pucker in your fabric maybe because your line is not on the other line. I hope that makes sense. All right, I'm going to stitch a little bit more and then I'll show you when I'm done. And also, we talked about trimming. I think I left about 1/4 of an inch. This is where, as you're pinning it and as you're moving around, you might decide to trim off a little bit more. But really, it's just if you feel like you have too much bulk. I feel like 1/4 of an inch is just about right. Okay, just a couple more stitches left, but I just wanted to point out this is why it's important to, I think my fingers are all in the way there, to pre-pin and make sure that everything stays right where it is, because even as we get to the end, you can see that our lines still match up. That's the only time that you really run into trouble with this method, is if you didn't pin well in the beginning. Then you have a little bit of trouble with bulk and things kind of bunching up when you get to the end. And also, if you noticed, you can take teeny tiny stitches or you can take bigger stitches. It doesn't matter. When you get to the end, I do kind of knot it off, just like if I were doing embroidery, but of course I'm going to sew over this edge, so I don't worry so much about it. So this is what it looks like. I'm going to go over and I'm going to go ahead and press it, and then what will happen is you can't see any of my stitches at all, and as soon as that red line goes away, you won't see any evidence of what I had done. All right, there it is. So I've pressed it so the red mark is gone and you can't see any of the stitches. In my mind, it's just the easiest way to do hand applique because there's no fancy stitches, no needle turn, nothing you have to worry about. You're just going to stitch line to line, line to line, line to line using just a basic running stitch. And again, the whole key to it is this teeny tiny little needle and a teeny tiny little thread, which is kind of important. So now that I've done my first one with this one, now I'm going to do my second one. And in fact, all I'm really going to do, that was why I'd put that other mark on there, is I'm probably just going to take my friction marker put my line on here enough so that you can see it. These of course come in, what are the colors? Blue, black, and red. We also have a white. It's not a friction brand, but we do have a white iron-off pen. Okay, so it's on here. My next color is going to be this one. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'll take whatever. I'm going to go ahead and make my red line, and I'm going to do the exact same thing. Stitch on this line, press the whole thing down, removing the line, and then I'll do the last one, but what I'll probably do is line that one up so that I can make the mark so that everything lines up right, and this is going to be my last color. So I'm going to go ahead and work on that a little bit. It takes me a little while. What takes me so long, I'm just going to be honest with you, is threading that needle. But if you have somebody who can pre-thread needles for you, that's always one really helpful tip. If you have trouble with that tiny little eye. All right, I'm going to show you Jen's just so you can see. Again, my colors are going to be blue, blue, and then blue. She did it more the way that Corey did it, where they did kind of this really cool coral color, the text print, and then the pink. So whatever you've decided to do, again, that whole idea of just appliquing down one, the second one, the third one, and then when you're done, we'll piece that to the top of the other pieced block. And we are done with the pieced block in month number 4. So in 2 weeks, we'll be doing the next hand applique block. 2 weeks after that, we will do block number 5, the pieced block. So sew along and we'll get this Jaye's Bouquet quilt finished up.
Thank you for watching our video. We invite you to leave a comment, hit the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel so you never miss an episode. You can also visit our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or Pinterest pages, or find all of those things and our online store at fabricpatch.net.